Antonio, welcome to Talk Python to me.
Hey, Michael. Thank you for having me.
It's fantastic to have you here. You've done some really cool work to highlight some of the guests and some of the things that they've covered. And so I feel like this is going to be a very meta episode where we reflect back on what has come before and what people have recommended. And, we're coming up, it's not quite December yet, but we're coming up on the end of 2021. And so maybe a look back is, in order.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I think it's a way to celebrate the people and celebrate those small, packages people are highlighting at the end of each of the podcasts. I think it's lovely. I think it deserves to have a place somewhere where everyone can contribute and you can go back to history and remember all these 2 point to 3 point
Yeah.
and how things have been evolving. It's just amazing, really.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. People have asked, like, hey, is there a way I can see answers to those last couple questions at the end of the show where I ask people for a notable PyPI package or what editor they're using? And it'd be interesting to see, especially in the editor, changing over time, stuff like that. But at least on the notable PyPI package, you put together a really cool GitHub repository highlighting at least going back through 2021, mostly, I would say, what people have covered. So during this episode, we're going to dive into and discuss the highlights of the notable packages that the other guests have put out there. So
Exactly.
that's going to be great. Yeah,
Exactly.
thank you. That's
Exactly.
awesome.
Great.
All right, before we get into that though, tell folks how you got into programming in Python.
Okay. So try to make it quickly. I grew up in a really humble family, but we have tons of education and Legos.
Mhm.
So see, the first time I managed to have something I can really call it that was mine and could do it was when I entered to the university. I still have it.
Oh,
These
what is that there?
calculators.
Is that a Texas Instruments
I
or an
think
HP?
no, that
What
was
is it?
the HP. At the time was
Oh, yeah,
super
okay.
cool. So anyway, the point is, I start eh, at the university. I study electronic engineer. I'm the person who is my wife now. She was studying civil engineer. Okay, so they used to use these old Casio calculators, and they used to have a
Mhm.
lot of programs running
Yeah,
there,
they
a
were
lot
not
of
quite
libraries.
computers, but they were almost
Yeah,
computers.
yeah. I
They
mean, you
were
could
like had
you
like
you
a little
could you could
keyboard on them,
download
right?
exactly. You can download the whole application, and what happened is, to calculate a bridge, a building, or whatever, they used to use the calculation. So I decided to, you know, try to, get some, laugh out of these, and start translating all these programs, from this Casio to this HP, and and helping the other guys in the
Yeah.
the university, and that helped me a lot to get really deep into, right. So straight away, start programming Visual Basic. I then in the same university, I have done assembly,
Oh my
C,
goodness.
C++,
Yeah.
yeah, the whole thing, right. So uh, more recently, once I start, after graduation, I have tons of experience with other languages like C Sharp and recently with recently with Python, and tons others. I just love this, really. It's just an amazing way of do end to end whatever you want to do. Just you can make it super quickly.
Yeah, it's all about empowering people to build things quick and get
Yes,
stuff
exactly.
accomplished, right? Yeah, fantastic. Boy, I can't even imagine programming from the old Casios to the old HPs because they were really interesting to program. They were not like super high level
No, no,
languages.
exactly. But in terms of the for loops and the inputs and the logic, and once you get the stuff, then it's easy to switch between languages, right? I mean, this has been amazing. And what is funny is,
Yeah.
the way how I went through Python. That was around. I remember quite clear. I was finishing my master dissertation. I was doing some deep learning work at the time. once I was finishing, the one of my colleagues, he told me, "Hey, Google just released something called TensorFlow." I was like, "Hmm?" I
What is
went
this?
there, look at the web page. I couldn't understand the syntax. I was, what is this? And this, my colleagues say, no, that's Python. I was like, yeah, but TensorFlow, the API is a bit different. Anyway, so I decided. I remember like 2 weeks after that, I took a flight from Moscow to Barcelona, and on my fly, I installed the application, to learn Python. And that's it, once I landed, I could do the one-to-one translation, So after that moment,
Yeah.
that's it, I mean, everything, back end, pushing also front end, gluing everything, beautiful integrations, And what I think is the most important is the time you save, that is just amazing, If you want to get out an MVP, a minimal variable product. If you want to prove value, I think Python is probably the best way how to do it. In a couple of weeks or days, you can get out something out and prove it. It doesn't work, just fail fast. Don't
Yeah.
wait 1 year, right? To show the value. Then you can improve as you go. So it's just amazing.
Yeah. Fantastic. I've been doing a ton of programming lately, rewriting some e-commerce stuff and other things. And yeah, I've been enjoying being deep in the code lately and just appreciating how quick you can move. That's fantastic. All right. So are you ready to dive into these things? There's no real format other than just the chronological order that it came out, right?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, maybe quickly introduce your GitHub repo that you created that obviously is going to be in the show notes. People, I'm sure you wouldn't mind if other people contributed content back to the repo, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you, I see what I'm doing right now is, usually I listen the podcast when I'm commuting work to work. So I wait to listen everything, to understand the context and everything, and then go there and have a branch and do the modification uh, for the new episode. If you guys want to, feel free, to do a fork at the new episode and contribute. Straight away, I
Mhm.
will be more than happy to to get compliment. And if anyone can help me to go back to the years, it's fine. I'll promise I will put it because I have most of the tools is automated. It's all about going back and doing some cleanup, right? So as the you publish the 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 text, the
Yeah, the
transcript.
transcripts. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so I'm trying to use a bit of NLP, to try to get what's the package. Having that's one of the reasons why also I try to do it, right? Try to get it. It's not that right, but if anyone wants to do this cool stuff, why not? Good
Yeah,
learning.
sure. The transcripts are all published to GitHub just as text files. So if people want to go at
Exactly.
them, they don't have to scrape the web or anything. They can literally just fork it and pull them down. Maybe I'll put that in the show notes as well. Yeah, so you created this repository, and basically for each episode, at least the recent ones, you go through and you highlight what was the episode, when it was published, who was the guest, those kinds of things. But the whole point is to show, well, what did that guest answer, those guests, if it's a set of panelists, what did they answer to the notable PyPI package that people should check out?
Exactly.
All right.
And then it's there. We try to keep a small description. I mean, the links for those packages. So great. So should we?
Yeah, let's dive in. So episode 342 was the
Right. So
recent one published. We actually recorded some between we've recorded them but not released any episodes beyond that.
exactly,
So as
exactly.
far as like what's on the podcast is concerned, 342 at the time of recording is the most recent one. That was Gui Talarico talking about Python and architecture and construction. All right, what did he give a shout out to?
I mean, Pythonic. I know this is quite famous, that package. Many people are using it. I didn't
Mhm.
know about it. So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool because right? So you want to do an automation for something, let's say that you have a small Arduino or Raspberry. You want to keep something in the house. I don't know, if you detect something on your camera, go and turn on the lights or whatever, or if this stock market and in these indicators, this is happening, go and sell and buy.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah, this is really neat. So it's like a graphical designer for running code in a Docker container or on Raspberry Pi. Yeah, or you can run it there and then it writes. Does it actually write Python code? I don't know. I haven't tried it, but
I haven't tried,
yeah.
because I was just listening yesterday. So what I will say that it seems to be quite visual. You drag and drop seems to be that you drag and drop, make things, and then the whole logic may be there.
Uh-huh.
So we need to explore it. I
Yeah.
think this can do pretty cool stuff at home. I don't know, like Halloween. Go
Oh
detect the
yeah,
face.
exactly.
Have your whatever, your Chromecast, or just talking. Your
When the kid comes in a costume,
exactly,
see what kind
exactly,
of costume it is and pick the right video to play for them. That'd be awesome.
exactly.
Yeah, so Pythonic graphical Python programming for trading and automation. Yeah, I love it. We always need more graphical type of stuff in Python. I think of the places where it could get a little more strength and support and features, building UIs and doing things in a UI oriented way. I'm all for it. All right, yeah, that's an excellent one. Okay.
Yeah, then exactly.
Good.
Then the previous one was Beck. So he was telling us about the UMAP, Uniform Manifold Approximation and Projection. In a nutshell, is whatever we have so much data in so many dimensions. Usually, I work with real-time, multidimensional real-time data, and whatever you need to analyze it,
Yeah.
whatever you need to understand, how they cluster together. This is beautiful. I mean, just load your data set, run it, and then you can have a dimensional reduction on the data set, and you can plot it, and you can see things you were not able to see before on the data. Also plotting. You don't need to plot the whatever millions records. You will just do the dimension reduction, and it's easy to understand a bit more about the data. It's just beautiful. For
Yeah.
those out there on the data science, I didn't know about this one either.
Yeah, I didn't know about this one either. This looks fantastic. Uniform manifold approximations and projections. Yeah, this is not a world that I actually get a chance to spend a whole lot of time in. But yeah, it sounds to me like a little bit of the world that you're working in though.
Mhm.
This is the thing that's relevant, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So you get all these like nice visualizations of the data where like how it's grouped and a lot of nice visual aspects like color plus
Exactly. So you can
two-dimensional
you
stuff.
can so basically you can get clusters out of your data, and from out of there, then is when you start working with the data, right? So I don't know, you want to detect something out of a lot of noise, so you can really separate noise from the data, for example.
Mhm.
Or if you want to classify a bunch of text, so you want to do something different, and find other ways how to see this in a smaller data sets, in 2D data sets. That's the way. It's just amazing.
Yeah, very cool. And of course, this is a recommendation from Bex Choichev, who talked, he's all into Kaggle and Kaggle competitions. He talked about 25 pandas functions you didn't know existed with probability 0.8, which I thought was a nice
He
little
was, the
caveat to
title
the talk.
was really good. Yes.
The title was really good. Yeah, so this is a perfect follow on to like you've got this data in a data frame and let's try to understand it a little bit, right? Cool. All right. Number 340. This was Anthony Shaw talking
Anthony, we
about
love you,
pigeon.
man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you
Shout out.
so much for everything what you guys are doing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, he's doing tons of good work.
Wow.
So what did he talk about?
Great. So he told us about this package, 3 packages. So the first one was the Tortoise RM. This one is an easy async.io ORM. I try is pretty. I mean, the API is really simple and clean, and
Hmm.
this is what stand out from the rest of the ORMs, which are currently starting to support Async.io. So I it deserves a good try. Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. It's certainly simple to use, right? It's if you've used Django ORM or if you've used SQL Alchemy, it should feel really natural to that. And
Exactly.
then whenever you do the work, just I guess it's worth pointing out this looks like an active record design pattern ORM where you operate directly on the documents as opposed to a unit of work, which is SQL Alchemy, where you like create a session, do a bunch of stuff, and then save it. So you would go like if you created a tournament object, you could just say tournament.save, but because it's async first, you say await tournament save. If you want to create one, you say await tournament.create and you pass the data, or same thing for the queries and so on. So if you're using any framework like Fast API or Court to make Flask async or anything that's basically async first, right? If async is almost entirely about scaling the time you wait, not trying to
Exactly.
do stuff in parallel in Python for the moment at least. And databases are where we wait, right? We wait on databases
Exactly.
all day. That's like what a lot of apps just do.
Exactly. And more in that example, it's using SQLite. So here you go. Simple, clean, beautiful API, ready to go. It's just pretty neat.
Yeah, awesome. So Anthony wasn't content to suggest just one, was he?
Just three of them. Let's don't dive into the next two, but let's just probably quickly on top of this, why not to use the same idea and apply this for MongoDB? Here you go.
Absolutely.
So simple. So this I'm not sure how to pronounce Vinny.
Beanie.
Probably Vinny. Yeah,
I
here
think
you go.
Beanie.
Yeah. So that's something I will suggest to the people who are the owner of the repositories. Try to put the
Yes.
how they want us to
How
uh,
how about this? A little play button just next to the name where you just hit play and it's the creator of
simple.
the project saying the name.
Here
I
you
think that
go.
would be great because sometimes it's clear, but sometimes it's not clear what part should be an acronym and what part should be tried to say out. Like theoretically, this could be Bean IE, and it's not. It's Beanie, I believe, but you know you don't know that all the time if I look at it, right? So having a little play about it. Yes, I'm all for this. I
Exactly.
I often
Exactly.
I often criticize places saying if you are anything to do with graphs, UI, whatever, you should have a picture on your site because a lot of them don't. And I think this is another good suggestion. Let's have some
Yeah, the pictures,
sound.
guys. Put something, please. It makes so visual. And if you don't have the small logo, I don't know, maybe a small screenshot of animation of how it works. It
Yeah,
helps a lot. For to have a bunch of
exactly.
start.
Tony out in the audience says, I agree regarding the pronunciation. All right. We already got 3 votes for this idea. I do
Here
think
we
it
go.
helps that the icon is a hat, like the beanie hat. So I think that's going to help.
So there will be a challenge for our GitHub team. Let's see how
Exactly.
quickly they can release such of a small enhancement. Let's see. Let's give it a try.
Yeah. So beanie is an ODM, like an ORM, but when you don't have relations and you have documents, you change the R to a D. It's an asynchronous Python ODM for MongoDB based on Motor, which is MongoDB's async Python library, and Pydantic. So if you want to talk to MongoDB using async and await, and you want your things you exchange with it to be Pydantic models, all of that sounds great to me.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So it looks really cool. I'm using MongoDB, of course, for Talk Python and Talk Python training, all those things. And I'm using Mongo Engine. I would certainly consider using this for it, but I'd already created it, 5 years before it existed. So that's one of the problems, right?
Exactly. I mean, but for someone who is starting, if Anthony is recommending it for a reason, so I will go and take a look at that.
Yeah. And just sort of foreshadowing. In a couple of episodes, I'm going to have Roman Wright, the creator of Beanie, on here to talk about Beanie. So we'll dive
that's
more into
cool.
it in a
Wow.
future episode. Yeah. So we'll get into the details. All right, and then
And exactly the last one, so this is pretty good, So basically, it's as SQL host scanner, so and dictionary attack tool. So you can pass a filter of series of passwords, and length, and give it a try. Allow it to find vulnerabilities. It's just amazing. This type of tools, you can imagine how useful are in the enterprise. There are a ton
Yeah.
of them running every single day, every single seconds. Try to, the security teams trying to hack
Hundreds
themselves,
of databases,
trying to
database
find
servers,
out what
people
is
set
going
up.
on.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, oh
Hundreds
yes,
of them set up, and who knows who set them up and if they configured them correctly. And so it'll
yes,
just
exactly,
hammer away for known usernames and passwords and defaults and all kinds of stuff, right? And then list out the
exactly.
ones that it finds, which is good.
Great.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so that was the 3 from Anthony Shaw. Thank you, Anthony. And then we had the Guido van Rossum and Mark Shannon on
Yeah,
to talk about
no time.
performance. Yeah, that was
I'm
great.
I'm guessing. I mean, I'm not sure. Guido will really, and Mark will suggest any package, but I really love see both of them joining and sharing the job they're doing. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing. I have a question, for them and also Anthony, how what they're doing, it will work all together. Times will say, but
Right.
I
Right,
will really
because
appreciate the
what
work
Mark
you guys
Shannon
are
and
doing.
Guido are working on is different than Pigeon and what Anthony Shaw is
Mhm.
working on, which is different than Sam Gross's work on Cinder, and so on. Not Cinder, on the No-Gill, sorry. Cinder is done by Dino Phelan. So there's just all these projects of people doing stuff. It'd be great if they could, find some common ground to amplify that.
Exactly. Whatever they can do is really welcome. I'm sure the community will appreciate it. And each of them have a different use cases, and they will hit a limit. So let's see. Whatever support they need, community is here really to help.
Yeah, right on. All right. Next, back in October, middle October, we had episode 338 using CI build wheel to manage the scikit hep packages. And I learned a bunch of stuff about just how to properly build Python packages from Henry Scheiner, the guest there. That was a lot of fun. What was the thing he recommended?
Right. So Plotex, guys, if you love CLI, like I do, go and do everything there on your console. Period. You want to plot time series, you want to plot your stock market, you want the price, and you want to do extra things. That's the tool. I didn't know. It's so
This is
cool.
crazy.
It's so cool.
Yeah, 100% Python. And basically, it plots directly to your terminal. So if you wanted to do something like matplotlib, even the syntax it says is similar. If you want like a bar graph or some distribution curves or even a picture, it'll literally put that in the terminal.
Just amazing.
Wow. This is awesome. Do you have some kind of use for this with the projects that you're doing where you've got to look at data?
Usually, I mean, even when you are logging things, if you want to do full debugging of something and you want to understand what is going on and you want to show it right there, this is beautiful. You can understand, I don't know, some data. So you don't need to really get out of your application and go to, I don't know, a notebook and play there.
Yeah.
You can enable that flag for your debugger and straight away, right there. It's just amazing, really. I mean,
yeah, over on Python Bytes, we spoke about this thing called here's another one where we need the pronunciation. Jute, J-U-T. I don't know. And what it does is this one will let you take the output of basically take a Jupyter notebook and let you put that into and basically view the notebook in the terminal, which is pretty awesome. So this one is like, but you don't really get the graphs and stuff of that, right? You get like the basic.
yes,
output.
exactly.
Whereas
But at least you
graphs.
see the cells. Yes, that's good.
Yeah. So all very good.
But this one gives you then the plot right there, using the ASCII. Just
yeah, I wonder, since the syntax is really similar to matplotlib, I wonder if there could be some add-on to Jute that says if you see a matplotlib, stub it out with plot text. That'd be awesome. All right, well,
time to try.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, thank you for that, Henry. And then we had a panel of Waylon Walker, Yatunda Dada, and Ivan Danov talking about Kedro, which is one of these like frameworks for managing data science, almost like a pipeline, but a little bit larger than that. Do you do anything like that? Do you use like Kedro or Luigi or Airflow or any of those things?
Not really on job wise, but personal use, yes. Okay.
Okay.
We'll go through that one down there. But what is interesting is, in the two packages they recommended. So one, is the first one was the FSS spec,
Yeah,
file
here's
system
another one that could use some help. I think
interface for
FS
Python.
spec.
Okay, here
I
you
think
go.
it's file system spec. Yeah. Actually, yeah. This
When I
gives you a
listen
little hint
when I
here.
listen, and this is the thing, when I listen to the podcast, I was like, okay, so I needed to come here and read it like 2 times to try to get exactly what they, what is aiming from this one is quite valuable library. I mean, treat all the files. It doesn't matter if it's in your desktop or on the cloud or whatever location. Have a simple API to go and handle the files. It's just amazing. I didn't know. I work a lot with Pandas data frame, for example.
Yeah.
Even when it's not, data related, data science related. I used to get the help of all the C underline the
Right.
pandas, the numpy. Like if I want to do a SQL query, I use pandas. I usually don't go through the ORM, and the reason is the speed. You go and check, and you can do the insert, or you can do things through the pandas pretty quickly. And these things are all in the back end. Helping
Yeah.
to do that. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's super cool if you want to write the file sources that are not actually file sources, then this is a really, really good one for that. Yeah, so people could look through the docs, but also out there, let's see. I was hoping somewhere there's like a list of all the different things, and I know
the files they support exactly.
Yeah. But there's things like databases,
Yeah, exactly, because
Excel,
it
all those
makes
kind of things.
anything to behave like a file. A simple API that handle everything, whatever have to do with data, they will do it in so simple. Put the
And it all
URL, put the
uses
path,
the
put the
with open syntax, right?
amazing.
Yeah, here's a little example of like FS spec opens some URL to some place, could be S3 or wherever, and then you just use it as a file, like as a file object, which is great. And then obviously this one was from that episode with William Walker, who happens to be in the audience. Hey, William, or Waylon, sorry. It says, yes, FS spec does not get enough love. Yes. Thanks, Waylon.
Amazing. Exactly. And that's the reason of this repository. We need to keep it there. People should take a look. That's it. Simple.
Yeah. That's why I started asking that question. I'm like, all right, I know there's things like this that I've never heard of that I should be hearing of. And then the other one was Dynaconf. And I think we got to FS spec because Dynaconf used it potentially, I believe.
So this one, really, I didn't know this. That's the beauty of Python. There is one library, one package for to do everything, right? So this one is a easy way how to do setting loaders. As I put it there on steroids. So it doesn't matter if you have a py, ini, a JSON, other formats. Just it will handle it. Period. Forget about what is out there. Super easy to use.
Yeah, and it has like support for environments like development versus testing versus production.
So and also you can keep the secrets, the file for the secrets, the file for the settings for the secrets, and the settings, the normal settings. So well designed.
Plugins for Django and Flask, talks to HashiCorp Vault for some of the secrets and so on. Yeah, this is quite neat, and it makes good use of emoji in its output. So I always appreciate a good emoji in the output.
Me too. Yeah.
I don't know, it's so small, but it just makes me smile when there's a little color, a little pizzazz. So yeah, really good. All right, and that takes us on to something that has been getting a ton of attention lately is Will McGugan's work, episode 333, Terminal Magic with Rich and Textual.
rich and
Yeah.
textual. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you guys. I mean, it's just piece of great work. They have done. During the podcast, they he mentioned about this object explorer.
Yep.
So quite cool. Get your
Yeah.
object. I mean your object and just explore it. It feel like if you were in your IDD. Simple. It's just for
Yeah.
those
So what
CLI
I
lovers. Here you go.
yeah, so what I used to do is I would like type print out dir of object, dir parenthesis object, and it'll show you basically the dictionary of functions and fields and just all the attributes and whatnot. This is way better. Like imagine something like I don't know if this is actually using rich. Let me look real quick here. Yep, this is based
Yeah.
itself upon rich. So imagine rich was used to build like a beautiful UI that you could arrow, list out stuff you could, search through and arrow through and select things. And yeah, this is fantastic, right?
And that will be the reason why we have the textual. The other one that we're talking about is the same, right? So using both rich and textual, you can do these type of things.
Yeah, rich lets you write really awesome stuff to the terminal, like progress bars and tables and colored syntax highlighted JSON and whatnot. And then textual kind of allows you to lay out different parts of the screen. So you could have like a thing docked to the left and then fill the rest of the terminal with the output as you select the thing on the left. Yeah, perfect. That's kind of what this is for DIR, but way, way better. I love it.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So we're all the way back to middle of September with episode 335, Gene Editing with Python. And our guest here was David Bourne. And he talked about one that I hadn't heard of, but I'm sure some people could definitely use in the DevOps space.
So AWS and also, the rest of the cloud providers, Google and everyone else, they have such a beautiful APIs to integrate with their systems. And this is one of them, right? So so many things you can do with, that's it. I mean, I really love the way how all these cloud providers are enabling all these APIs to do absolutely everything.
Yeah. I mean, you hear of like one of the things that makes cloud computing special. Like there used to be the joke. Let me see if I can find it. Cloud computing, just someone else's server or something like that, right? There was that joke, and oh man, I'm not finding it on the quick search here, but there was this joke that what is the cloud? It really is just someone else's server. But one of the real big differences is that you can program against this thing. Like I remember way back when we were doing some e-commerce stuff and some software stuff, we went to Rackspace and we requested that they provision a server. And like several days later, a human had said, "Yes, Michael, here's your server we made for you." And that was great back then. But with the cloud, it's all about programming against the infrastructure, like infrastructure as code type of thing. And this cloud development kit that David suggested was all about, well, here's the Python API to program AWS, basically, right?
Mind blowing. I mean, if you see, the implementation, I mean, the impact on the enterprise, these type of APIs, and the ability to do it through Python is just neat.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, it's not a thing that I do very much. I do have some APIs that work against our servers for like, if everything goes right, zero downtime deployment on like Git push type of things, but not to the degree that like the cloud development kit will do, right? You could do way, way more stuff than what I got going on. All right. And then David also suggested Luigi.
Okay.
Luigi.
I mean, this is the whole, when I listen this name Luigi, I remember my wife, family is Italian. So,
Fantastic.
See what this does. This does everything, right? This is the big spaghetti, right? It's workflow management, task scheduling, dependency resolution, everything in one place.
Even has a
But
visualizer for all the like
yes,
the
yes.
dependency graphs and whatnot, right?
And this is really good because, like Dask style, you can do the whole, you define through functions how your workflow will work. And as things start completing, you reach to the end, to the completion. They can be quite isolated. They can be near to you or far away, in the cloud or in other providers. And then you can reach your end goal and know when things fail or know when things are completed. I mean,
Hmm.
uh,
You get some
applications,
awareness
yeah.
to where the that particular job is making it through because you can see what part's finished, what part is still working, what's waiting on what. Yeah, it's very cool.
Exactly, exactly. Who wants to do again home automation? Who wants to do, in the enterprise, say, completing your workflows? Here you go, and then you have a bit of nice user interface, web interface. You have all in is one stop. That's it.
Yeah. And for people out there who are all about Python, which is the audience basically, everything in Luigi is Python instead of XML configuration or similar external files like think YAML, JSON, whatever. The dependency graph is specified within Python, which is pretty cool.
Great.
Yeah, and I think this one came out of Spotify, if I recall
Yes,
correctly.
exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
and this is something I really love from the tech companies. Their management have understood that they can uh, uh, work together with the open source community.
Hmm.
We help them. And back to my position as an enterprise. I can use it, right? So it's just really a call from every single company who have something that can be open source. Go ahead and do it. You are going to get so much out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Worst case, nobody cares. Best case, you find other people who are passionate about this thing that you built, and then they'll help you improve it, without
Ex-
any
ex-
effort from you, right? Like that's awesome for a
exactly.
company to have other people help work on your
Exactly. They
code.
find the box for you.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
help you with the documentation. It's a win-to-win situation.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many of these things that companies have to build, not because it's their core value proposition. It's just that, well, we need a thing to schedule some stuff, so we figured that out. But like, it's not what makes Spotify special, right? So they don't
Exactly.
need to hide
Exactly.
and protect it, right? Put it out there. That's great.
Exactly.
All right. Next episode, going back to September 18th, September 9th on the recording, I guess, we talked about the planetary, Microsoft Planetary Computer, which is like basically cloud computing for people researching climate change and similar geospatial stuff. That was Rob Emanuel and Tom Augsburger. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
Rob and Tom, thank you for sharing. I think this is, we need so much of this, in those
Mhm.
days. I think it's well deserved, this type of contribution from, if any big company can, just go ahead, don't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the thing that they recommended, I can't remember, I think it was Tom, but I'm not 100% sure, it was Seaborn, which also I
Seaborn.
saw back when we were talking about the one that Bex recommended, which was the UMAP one that also had a
Hmm.
bunch of examples
Exactly.
in Seaborn. Yeah. So
In the
uh,
you usually in the data science world, Seaborn is really used. You can do everything with Matplotlib. I don't like how it looks like. I
yeah.
know many people will come back to me and say, no, 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 you haven't tried X and Y and Z. I know. But, out of the shelf, that's it, Seaborn,
Hey,
just get the
look how
library, load
incredible
it.
this joint plot looks. Like if people go to the gallery and just kind of scroll through this hexagonal
Yeah.
joint plot, or some of these, it's
Yeah, to
not
do.
just showing you the data, but it's like, wow, that's publication level beauty
Hmm.
right there, right?
Really nice, really simple, I mean, you get the same that you get out of Matplotlib, but I will say, it's like a comparing the old Android with the Apple, with the iPhone. I'm Android guy, right? So guys, I'm a Windows guy as well. I use, myself. I use Linux through my Windows for subsystem. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but anyway, but that's a big comparison. You can do things pretty good in Matplotlib, but there's so many things out there which out of the shelf it looks beautiful. It also have a nice API, easy to use. one stop for beautiful visualizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony out in the audience says Seaborn is great. So another vote
Yeah.
for that as well. All right. Back to the perfect threes, episode 333. I thought this was a really fun episode. The state of data science in 2021 was Stan Siebert from Anaconda.
See, so wow, the NumPy and Spicy on GPU is I think is a great achievement for so many things we use day to day. I mean, every time you guys are talking to your phones and you are, even when you are not doing anything, the camera's watching you, the whole thing. There is so much happening out there thanks to the use of the GPUs at the time,
Yep.
still use. So the CuPy allowed to get that array and process through GPU. I mean, it's pretty good. And the beauty of this library is that it's used for so many others that help everything to go to go on steroids. Yeah.
Yeah. So CuPy comes from CUDA and Python. So I'm guessing CuPy is a NumPy SciPy compatible array library for GPU accelerated computing with Python. There's a lot of qualifiers there, but that basically means if you're doing stuff with NumPy, you can throw this at it. Instead of happening on your CPU, it'll happen on CUDA cores on, say, your NVIDIA 3080, which is an insane amount of computation.
Wow.
Yeah, very cool. Do you guys use GPUs for anything?
Yes, in the industry, mostly it's used for the seismic processing. It's a big size of images. That's usually where Linux is on the energy industry. Most of them, you have to do all these 3D graphics, all this processing from all these survey data. All this may be used. Okay.
Yeah, fantastic. I would love to see things come along that are a little more interchangeable. Right, like the CUDA stuff is fantastic, but CUDA is just NVIDIA. And we've got, AMD with Radeon. We've got the new, my new laptop's got like 16 neural cores or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but we all are getting these systems laying around, and it's very hard to get a hold of the GeForce GPUs. So I'd love to see like whatever GPU you want to bring or neural engine you want to bring, but I totally understand that that doesn't always work so easily. All right, the next episode is a very popular one. One of the most popular ones we've had recently, called Robust Python, with Patrick Villafor. Yeah. And so he talked about Stevedore, managing dynamic plugins for Python apps.
See, when I was listening to this podcast, I was regretting so much time I wasted in my life.
I built this whole thing that existed,
working on my add-ons, my plugins. This is just so simple.
Yeah.
That's it. And at runtime, forget about doing import and your new file and the whole thing. And need to go and no. Stop doing this, guys. There is a solution. That's the one.
Yeah, cool. So basically, if you want to build a plugin system for your code and make for your app and make things interchangeable and whatnot, Stevedore looks really good for that. Very nice. Back to August, summertime, episode 331 with Lucas Slenga.
Lucas, thank you so much. To everyone, right? But also to you. I use Black so much. I know that all the things you are today, going on today. You didn't mention Black, but we decided to add it here.
Yeah.
The uncompromising code formatter. Is that helps so much with people's relationship, I guess. More than beautiful Python, no more fighting. That's it. Just get agreement. Everyone use Black. That's the setting, or by default.
Yeah, it's one of the things where you can just take that whole debate and conversation out of different people's hands. It's not who is the most unmovable in the team or loudest in the team or whatever. It's look, we're just going to agree. The community said Black is close enough. maybe no one's going to be 100% happy with how things format, but it's just going to happen automatically. And we're not going to worry about code formatting anymore. And it's
Yeah,
good to
well,
go. And I think that's fantastic.
I will change the name, of the description, the uncompromising code formatter by, the frictionless code formatter. I mean, this is just beautiful.
Yeah, and you have people using different tools. Some people using PyCharm, some people using VS Code, some people using Emacs or whatever. And if you say clean up this code, what that means to those different systems, especially because you can customize every little detail, right? Like I want a space here, but not a space there. Those all become merge, not necessarily conflicts, but changes just because somebody cleaned up the code, but there's not a meaningful change on that line. So doing something like black in a pre-commit hook means you're not going to get those little weird changes just because the tooling decided to have a different opinion
Change
there.
the format,
Yeah. Douglas out in the audience says thumbs up to black. Right on.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Yeah, you're starting to see it be brought into other things as well. Like it just got integrated into Jupyter Notebooks, I believe.
Yes.
Or no, I always get this wrong. It now has support to point it at a Jupyter Notebook and have it format that. So very cool.
Okay, that's the way it'll work. Okay.
I'm pretty sure I may have reversed it twice in my mind, but I think that's how the PR suggested that it's going to work. Okay, so episode 333. This was a fun one. A group of Yarek, Caxel, and Leah talking about Apache Airflow, which is another one of these workflow pipeline things in Python. Yeah, so I don't think I actually get a chance to ask them a question this one. I might have run out of time.
No, that's the reason why sometimes I used to when I managed to get it because my time zone with you guys when I'm there and you're getting to the end, I usually try to get that small comment on the chat of YouTube just to to remind people don't miss the question. It's quite important. It was missed here, but anyway, amazing library again for data pipelines.
Apache Airflow looks really nice.
You can do your scheduling and monitor,
I think it's pretty similar to how we described Luigi. I think there's a lot of similarities.
But a bit more, a more, data focus, quite use a lot on the data science world. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It has all these integrations, which is nice, right? Like if you want to plug into other data sources, you don't have to necessarily program against them. You just grab one of those integrations and run. All right, episode 329, I had my friend Richard Campbell back on there. We talked about renewable energy. He's always fun to dive into the geek out episodes, but given the topic we were covering, it didn't really make sense to have a question, and we were out of time.
Exactly.
Thanks, Richard, but no question. Maybe I'll get one from you next time. We do something like that. Episode 328, Piccolo. Another ORM, and also one of the async ones, which is fun. But the package, this is Daniel Townsend, the package was not Piccolo. That was the topic. The package is Pydantic.
Okay, amazing. This is one of these really good packages, out there. Data validation. That's it. It makes
I think it really is. I don't know if it doesn't get enough love or not, but it deserves a lot of love. Let's say that. So it does really beautiful importing and transformation of data. So if you're receiving data from a file, or if maybe you're receiving it from an API and the data is not super cleaned up, this thing will do its best to, one, either automatically clean it up, or two, it will tell you precisely what's wrong with it. So like, suppose you're getting a JSON document back and it has a list of things, and the third thing in the list is not parsable as a date time or something crazy like that. It'll tell you the third thing in the list couldn't be converted to a date time rather than exception invalid format, right? It's beautiful, right? So that's one of the things that's lovely. The other thing is it uses type annotations in really meaningful ways. So if you have like the example on the website says, here's a user with an ID :int. That means there's no specified default, and the data provided must provide an int because it's not an optional int. It must provide an ID. there's a name which is equal to John Doe. So you don't have to provide one. There's a default. And because the default's a string, name is a string. But there's a sign up that may or may not have a value. So it's an optional date time. And all those things factor into the transformation and the parsing and whatnot, right? Yeah. Super nice. And the other thing is it works with Fast API to define the open API, the Swagger stuff. So for example, let's see if I can find, I created a Fast API over at weather.talkpython.fm because I had been using some other weather API for a course. And of course they changed. They used to be free and now they're not free. And so I'm like, well, if I got to rewrite this course, I'm not going to depend on somebody else's API again. So it'll answer questions like, what is the weather or wherever, right? But you can also go to, docs. Just go to /docs and you get like, oh, here's all the data that'll be exchanged. And it's going to return a forecast, which has a wind, which has a speed, which is a number and an integer. And all this is automatic from Pydantic being plugged into Fast API. It's beautiful.
It's just amazing, I mean, and that's the thing, that's how you glue these libraries, these packages together, what makes the magic.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are really beautiful by itself, when you start using all together, and then you put on top whatever rich, if you want to then have a beautiful output on the CLI or whatever. So that's
absolutely. Furlian out in the audience says Pydantic is one of those packages that makes my work successful without flair. Yeah,
exactly.
It just makes it easy. We're just gonna do that.
All right.
All right. Let's see how we do on time. We got time for a couple more there.
Couple of more. We weren't able to finish all, but you guys are getting what we're trying to do here.
So we're on July now. I think I'm gonna predict we can make it to May, and then we're gonna run out of time. But this episode was really cool. I thought also episode 327, little automation tools, because I think it speaks to so many people who are not necessarily, oh, I'm like chief senior software architect at Instagram or whatever. Like everyone can use these. We had Rivers Cuomo from Weezer. We had Jay Miller. We had Kim Van Wyck and Rusty Gregory on in the panelists here, and that was super fun.
Amazing. So they introduced PipX.
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried? I didn't try.
I use PipX all the time. I love PipX. Oh,
nice.
So good.
Okay. I use version management, but it's so simple. They have this small GIF on their GitHub repository. Go install it, and then just do everything against the PipX.
So I heard about PipX when it first came out, and that was, I'm trying to remember, Chad Smith, I believe, told me about it, and it was just an individual project, and now it's part of PyPA, which is the Python Packaging Authority. So it's become sort of official. Wow. And people use Homebrew for Mac OS. They use App for Ubuntu and Chocolatey for Windows, and that installs all sorts of tools. But if you want something like, I need to install a tool that I could run, and it just happens to be based on Python, well, then PipX is that equivalent, right? Because there's a lot of programs and tools out there that are awesome that you want from Python. For example, like Black. I want to run Black against a thing, but my program doesn't depend on it. So it doesn't necessarily need to be installed in that virtual environment, but instead I just need it on my system, right?
Exactly. So go install it and run that application in your isolated environment. Just beautiful. Super smart.
Yeah, Waylon says, I use PipX for so many things. Ansible playbooks, Kedro install, many personal repos. One that I use it for is Glances. Other things. I'll show you some stuff that I can also be used for that's not as interesting. So this is a fantastic, fantastic tool. Like if you ever use Top to figure out what's going on in your server, the way you spell Top is GLANCES. Glances. That's what you should type. It is so much better. But it's a Python library. So PipX install Glances, and it gets its own environment with its own dependencies in there, and it doesn't mess up. Also, there's recently TipTop, I believe, is also based on Rich. But if you check this one out, this one also looks like a really interesting one where it's like Glances. It gives you a terminal UI about your server, but this one has running graphs. So running
Nice.
graphs of the CPU across the cores, by the way. Like if you got a 4-core, 8 hyper-threaded core machine, it'll give you 8 graphs. And then like graphs of memory, network graphs, plus your process stuff. So like all of
Mind-blowing.
these things are perfect candidates for installing with PipX.
Exactly.
But another one, PyJoke.
Oh,
So if you just need some jokes, you can just pipx install PyJokes and then just type PyJoke anytime you want, and you get something great to come out.
yeah, I have tried that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right,
Nice.
anyway, pipx is a very good one. All right, so that was, I don't remember who on there recommended that one, but that was a really good one. All right, let's see. We had Mike Driscoll on to talk about building desktop apps with DevX Python. And of course, he does a lot of stuff integrating with things like Excel and with PDFs and stuff. So what was the one he recommended?
So open a PyXL. So you need to work with Excel, pretty nice API. I usually do it with straight away with pandas, I make it even simpler. But for those
I
out
think
there
Pandas internally might use OpenPyXL as well.
exactly. I didn't check, but most probably. Okay. So go and read and write Excel. You go and select your ranges. What is your book inside your spreadsheet, and super neat. At the end, go read it, put in a table, do your loops, do your calculations, and then process your data. Simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can even do like formulas and formatting and other stuff through here. So with
it has
like
full control of Excel.
Yeah, with like pandas, you can put data out pretty easy and stuff. But if you want to say like, I want this one bold, stuff like that, I think this is more the level you got to work at, which is cool. All right. MicroPython and CircuitPython. I don't know if this is a joint episode or a battle. Actually, it turned out to be kind of a joint episode. I talked to Scott and Damien specifically because they had done a ton of work where CircuitPython and MicroPython had merged a lot of the differences that they'd been working on together back into like a more uniform code base. So they talked about HTTP Pi, I'm gonna guess on that name there.
Yeah, exactly. So
what is this
what
one?
so that one is a Python base for easy request. Okay, I'm day to day. I spend 99% of my time on Windows. Sometimes, I don't know, due to my enterprise policies, I cannot do a CCAR. So this is an easy way how to achieve that. If you need to do a wget command and you're on Windows, for example, that's the way. Super simple.
Yeah, this is cool. It's based on Python, and one of the things I think is neat about it is it has a specification file. So instead of like putting -d here's a key value thing I want to pass, -d here's another, and here's the URL and so on, you just create one of these configuration files and then you say make the request that's stored in that file, and off it goes, right?
Exactly.
That's neat. Yeah, that's really neat. While we're on that, another one that I like, I'm not sure I could phonetically distinguish it.
Okay.
Is HTTP IE pronounced, I believe, HTTP as well. This one is super neat as well, and one of the things that I really like about it, is this the same thing? I think so. Let's go to GitHub. But certainly the Python project, I'll go like this over here. This is also kind of like curl, but what's really cool about it is when you make requests, you just type HTTP or HTTPS and you give it a URL, and it'll print out like the headers and the cookies that it got back colorized in your terminal. It'll do pretty printing of JSON and code formatting, even like code highlighting of your HTML that might come back. So
love it.
Yeah, it's so good. If you think curl or wget, like put it down, go to HTTP. And the one I'm recommending is HTTPIE, not HTTPY, which is all
Exactly.
PY, which is also good. And it has it. I really love this sort of configuration file as well. So I see super value in both of them. But yeah, neat. Very good recommendation. Let's see. Gatorade powered Python APIs.
APIs.
Yeah,
Oh,
this
that
was
was,
this
yeah,
is such an
that book is
interesting one because Rob
wrong.
Senra, they worked on this project called the GX Sweat Patch from Gatorade, which is like a thing you put on your arm. And then you work out and then you analyze it with Python. It's incredible.
Really nice. Really
Yeah.
nice.
So coming back around, he suggested Rich.
Rich. Here you go. So one of the, I think probably favorites of 2021, couple
Yeah, I
of
would say
times
too.
mentioned. Yeah. Really amazing library. You know, I really love just to go, from Rich import prints, and that's it. You get straight away a different feel and look on working with your CLI. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's see. Let's say I'm going to say we have time for
just on top.
one.
Yes, exactly.
One more. It's probably time to wrap it up because so how far are we made? We made it to the middle of June 2021. All right, cool.
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. This is Itamar Turner Trowering. I had him on to talk about best practices for Docker in production, kind of in quotes for Python developers. And that was fun. And he talked about a lot of things, but his package was Py-O3. Tell us about Py-O3. No, Py-O3 is missing. I'm about to search for it.
Is broken. Oh, wait.
Hold on. All right, there we go. Rust bindings for the Python interpreter. What do we got going on here?
So, I mean, for this one, if using Python from Rust, I remember one time I was looking at some source code where they were in C# embedding assembly or embedding another programming language and running that on side and doing the whole thing. Similar, I didn't know. I think at this moment it's obvious, right? But I didn't realize that you can do this the Rust binding for Python. So I don't know. I haven't used Rust, but I'm guessing they're supposed to be most probably one of these type of wrappers, bindings for so many other languages.
Yeah,
I'm not aware of.
I
and
haven't
would
really
love
used
to
Rust
hear.
either, but if I had to go back to a low-level language like C, I would prefer to not go back to C, which I used to do. I would rather go to something like Rust, like a modern C-level language, I guess, is probably the way. Yeah, so Py-O3 will let you write a native Python module in Rust. So if you need to make a certain part of your Python code go really fast and be more native, I guess that's an option. Or in reverse, you can embed Python into a Rust binary, and I guess from there run Python code within your Rust app.
So for everyone out there, once you listen to the podcast, if you know about similar library for other, to do bindings for other languages, just please share it. I mean, it's so nice. I mean, I think it makes things so good. We need to start now, probably just jumping and grabbing up because of the time, I guess, right?
That's right. Oh, there's so many more good ones. We got Alpine,
Yes.
Numba, Rich again, Fast API, Flask SQL Alchemy, and on and on and on. But
and on, exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
So guys, is there. Just go and take a look. I promise, now in December, I will take some leave. I will take 2 or 3 days to go back to the previous years, and try to put everything out there. Please take a look at this one. Please, contribute. If you see something wrong, go ahead. Super welcome to receive contributions there.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, people can definitely add to the work that you put here. This is great. So thank you for doing that. That's really neat. Now, of course, before you get out of here, you've got to face the 2 questions, right? So if you're going to write some Python code these days, Antonio, what editor are you using?
Day to day is VS Code.
Mhm.
However, when I found super easy to use Google Colabs notebooks.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of divided, right? So I don't need to, sometimes just get into to VS Code to do something small and check and plot is not useful. Now, so I'm divided, right? So when I'm working with projects, small or large, straight away through VS Code, love the integration with GitHub, with containers, everything, everything in a single user interface. And whenever I have to do a small web scraping or do a small data manipulation or whatever, I straight away go to the Google Colab notebooks and do it right there. I have
Yeah,
the
right
link, I
on.
can share it with the colleagues or friends, and it makes my life quite easy.
The all the online notebooks world, there's so many.
All of them,
There's
absolutely all of them.
so
Yes.
many. Are you familiar with the dot command on GitHub
Oh
repos?
yes, it's just
This
amazing.
if you're on
It's
any
just
GitHub repos and you just literally press dot, is that still? Oh, you got to be logged
so.
in to do that. Oh, you got to
Yeah,
be
yeah. You
logged
need to be
in.
logged in to do that.
But
But
if
anyway,
you, it's the
it's
same
it's,
as if
it's
you go to
exactly
code.dev, basically, then open it up.
exactly. If they manage to do
No,
this,
not code.dev, vscode.dev.
VS Code, yeah. So if they manage to do this, I'm sure there will be this small enhancement for the pronunciation of the packages won't be a big deal on GitHub, I guess. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but
pretty
this one
cool.
is just amazing. Press dots and open your VS Code right there with all your settings.
Absolutely. I try to not be logged into the browser I'm sharing on the stream because
Nice one.
I
Yeah, it's
don't want it to
exactly.
influence whatever shows up. All right.
Oh yeah.
And then notable PyPI package.
Okay.
Let's
So
put something onto your repo from you about the
he
repo. That'd be
wow,
very meta.
it's just good. So recently I was, my daughter, she wants to be YouTuber when she grows up. She's just,
Mhm.
she's still too young. But anyway, I wanted to help her and do some automation of, from creating the videos all the way to, posting this to YouTube. Uh, and it takes time to for editing and everything, so I wanted to get some help. So I was trying to see if there was any way using NLP to get a summary of any big web page. I don't know, you want to do a small video, you want to do small research, that's it, or you want to digest some news.
Mhm.
So you install this library called Sumi, Sumi. You basically put the URL of the web page of the PDF. You want to summarize how many paragraph, how many lines you want
Mhm.
to get out of this. And 98% of the job is amazing. I will say 100% of the time is really good. Um,
Simple library and command line utility for extracting summary from HTML pages
yes.
and plain text. How
So, for
interesting.
example, right? So you go to your transcript of the podcast and you say, okay, give me the most relevant 50 lines out of the transcript of, Talk Back Then to Me podcast, and that's it. You can print it out and uh, get in a quick way and extract some useful information. And the next one is related to the same, right? So I think this is not using the, the the official way. I hope they don't get penalized for me telling this. So it's called GTTS, Google Text to Speech.
Yeah,
Okay.
Google text to speech. Okay.
So this one is, again, Python libraries that interface with the Google Translate API, and then you get the MP3. So something I was using
Okay.
these two, gluing these two together, right? So go get the summary. Okay. Obviously, summary will help you to get the context. You would like to, do the proper referencing and citation and everything. And then for each paragraph, you can get the MP3 and put this on top of the video, and
Mhm.
then, go back and having tools like with these workflows tools, like Luigi, go and kick everything and then upload it to YouTube in one go, fully automated. It's just beautiful, how everything is, it can be done, everything can be glued together. Anyway, for those out there who want to try, these two are pretty neat.
Yeah, that is really cool. Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun stuff to play with. I love the automation. I love the summarizing. I really like that one. That's great. So cool. Good recommendations on both of these. And we now have a new thing to put into the GitHub repo.
That's good. That's good. So yeah.
All right. Well, Antonio, thank you so much for being here. I mean, final call to action. People want to check out this project you've created. What do they do?
Please just we'll just click on down there on the podcast, to the link. Go
Yeah,
through,
definitely. Obviously, I'll link to that. It's the main thing.
Contribute. Right? If you can, if you like it, don't forget to give us a start. Contribute. If you see anything wrong, please just welcome. Suggestions are welcome. And if I miss anything, any of the packages, for those who are in the podcast also, as well, just go through and if give us a bit of contribution there. So I promise to finalize all of them from episode number 1 by the end of this year, and after that we'll try to do few cool stuff there. So data could be retrieved as a JSON, just try to make it more accessible for the people.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Probably next. And next probably we can do the how over the time, if we can record which was the favorite editor and the times, and see how things change over the time. Have a really nice graph of how this code start coming up. And PyCharm as
there's
well,
a lot of ways to gather all this up and turn it into computer legible data and do all sorts of fun stuff.
Exactly. Second one, call for action is everyone's celebrating Thanksgiving. For those who are still live, so listening the live streaming, wish you a really beautiful holiday. For those listening to the podcast, I hope you really have a good time with families and friends.
Yeah,
if you want to reach me out, as usual, I'm on Twitter. I try to be nice on Twitter. I used to put everything on LinkedIn. Most of my technical parts there. But anyway, I'm reachable. If we didn't have time to talk about IoT, if there is anyone out there, who have pretty cool applications, hardwares, where you can go and deploy containers all the way to the edge, I will be super interested to hear from those individuals and companies and packages and everything, out there. That's kind of my day-to-day job. So please,
sounds fun.
Reach out. Yeah.
Right on. I'll be sure to put all your contact info in the show notes. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for creating this GitHub repo, and thanks for the look back to kind of highlighting the last half year of what people have talked about. It's been a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Thanks. Yeah.
See you
later.
guys.
Yeah. Bye.